Hi, I'm Amy Casey, and I'm a veterinarian working at Delta Downs. My grandfather won the Kentucky Derby twice in a row over 100 years ago. Jimmy Wingfield was a jockey, and he won the Kentucky Derby in 1901 on his Eminence, and Atlantadale in 1902, and he missed the third one by a nose.
By a nose,
By a
wow.
nose.
So he was very famous, and back then horse racing was more popular than the NFL, wasn't it? There was
Yes, it
thousands of
was.
people at the races. Did you ever hear stories about that?
A little bit here and there, very indiscriminately. My grandfather thought that the racetrack was really no place for a lady, but we enjoyed his stories about riding all over the world and all the people that he met, the languages he spoke. He spoke 4 different languages.
Wow.
Very rich background.
Now, back then times were obviously a little different. He won the Kentucky Derby twice, but then there was some strife in the country and he had to leave the United States. Tell me the circumstances behind that.
Well, it became a very lucrative, it started to become more lucrative back in those days. And the clans, the Ku Klux Klan came around and they decided no more African American jockeys. Actually, he was the last one to run in the Kentucky Derby and win until Marlon St. Julien rode much later. The African American jockeys back in that time were forced to leave the industry due to racial tensions.
Wow. So he eventually made his way to Europe, right? Before World War I and World War II. Tell me how that
Correct.
went.
Well, he went and he rode all over wherever they would have him to ride. He rode through Germany, he rode in Switzerland, and he settled for a while in Russia. And there in Russia, he rode for the Tsar and many of the aristocracy. He won the Russian Derby there and several other big crown. The Tsar's Triple Crown in Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he also married there, and I guess he lost his first wife, and then he married again, and then the Bolshevik Revolution broke out in the late 19-teens, 1917, 18, and he left. He was forced to leave then. So in the south of Russia, he left with over 300 horses.
Wow.
And then he rode, this is one thing my mother did tell me, he rode, continued to ride all the way across there until he settled right outside of Paris.
Wow.
And his wife, who was a baroness, left with her parents in the north and went through the Scandinavian countries and then dropped down to Paris. And they met back up there. Very exciting escape.
I'll bet. And then they were in France for a while, and then World War II came along. So tell me what happened there.
World War II came, and of course we know in 1939 Hitler occupied Paris, and he moved his troops in. He actually took over my grandfather's stables, and he moved his horses in. There were 2 and 3 horses per stall there, and that was the cavalry that Hitler used to go through the countryside.
Move troops around and things.
Yes. So then he felt danger from my mother. He figured my uncle, who was a year and a half, I believe, older than her, could stick around and help out. But he sent my mother to Cincinnati to live with his niece. So he stayed there for a while, and then he eventually left with my uncle.
And eventually made his way back to the United States, huh?
For a while.
For a while. Now your mother, just tell me real quick, your mother is still living in Ohio, right?
Yes, she lives in Cincinnati.
And she's how old?
95.
95
She's
years old.
95 years.
So what was it like when he came back to the States and eventually got into the Hall of Fame, you said, in 2004, right?
Yes, he came back and he spent winters with us so that he could visit with his grandchildren and my other siblings, and he would spend time with my mom, and they always played cards. And if I came home from school, they were playing cards. And Like,
Good way to pass the time without the internet and the TV and
oh
all that.
yeah, oh yeah. There was none back in
Yeah,
those days. I
exactly.
mean.
That's what I mean.
So,
Yeah.
and then when winter was over and spring training started back up, he would go back and help my uncle train, because my uncle was too stocky to be a jockey.
Yeah.
He was a trainer, so he grandfathered him into all of his teachings and trainings.
Now you're a veterinarian today, so are horses in your family's blood, so to speak? Because how did you get to be a veterinarian?
I've always had a passion for horses, and really an underlying passion for animals for a long, long time. But I always like to ride. Of course, I don't ride like
Yeah,
the jockeys
do.
here.
Yeah, a little bigger saddle.
Yeah, the Western pleasure
Yeah.
or just trail riding for me
Right.
was just fine.
Right.
But they were always God's greatest beast for me.
Yeah. Now we mentioned you went in the Hall of Fame in 2004. What was that like for your family and your siblings? and all
Oh
that?
wow, that was phenomenal. That was phenomenal. They brought us to Saratoga, and we were treated with royalty.
The Racing Hall of Fame.
Yes, and it was amazing. I had never been standing so close to some of the greatest names in thoroughbred.
Equine and human.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, they're all there. They're all memorialized.
Right, and it was amazing. And then DeSormo was standing there, and Shug McGahee, and
Yeah.
I mean,
Royalty.
Elaine Lucas. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like, wow,
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm here.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. And the plaque that they presented my mother with his information on it. We have one back at our house.
Yeah.
In her home.
Well, it sounds like he lived quite a life. When did he pass away?
In 1974.
1974.
Just before about 2 or 3 weeks before his birthday in March of 74.
So you have a little Russian blood in you, don't you?
Oh yeah, but I only speak a little, three words of Russian, and that's it.
Yeah, right?
Нет, спокойной ночи.
There you go.
And спасибо.
Yeah. Now, just to wrap it up, there have been several books written about your grandfather, and I'm in the process of reading one right now. Thank you so much for giving me that.
You're welcome.
What a story in those books. I bet you're proud of those publications too.
I really am. That first one, the Epic Journey Wing, was a spin-off of Ed Holtaling's The American Black Jockeys that came out, I think, three or 4 years earlier. He actually went over to Europe and did all the research
Wow.
behind, that book, and really put it together well. He's got all the details and phenomenal pictures. Even pictures of Bing Crosby and my dad and my grandfather in the stables, and very famous Russian painter, Polyakov, and just a treasure.
Now,
It's
not
really
only
a
did those
treasure.
books chronicle your grandfather's life and times and his amazing history, but that serves as kind of a family thing for you, doesn't it? Because you can trace your family back generations.
Really, it helps.
Yeah?
It helps quite a bit.
Yeah.
And knowing the history on my grandmother too.
Yeah,
Hey, I mean,
yeah.
who else has?
Most people don't have access to all that. So.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, you're
I'm
really blessed.
Really blessed.
Well, we're blessed to have you here at Delta Downs. Thank you for sharing your story, I should say, today. And I'm going to continue reading the book, and we'll check back within you, okay?
Thank you, Don. I really appreciate the time, and thank you for the exposure. And y'all go out and buy the book and see what you think.
I think they'll really enjoy it.
Thank you, sir.